Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another post-game show here on the Talking About His YouTube channel. And here with Kerry Collins covering the St. Louis Blues Colorado Avalanche series, which just ended. 3-2. Colorado Avalanche move on to the Western Conference Final to face the Edmonton Oilers. That was up in the air, though. It was 2-2 up until like 5 seconds left. And all people, Darren Helm, a guy that does not score a lot, scores the game winner, and
hadn't scored a
Compher
playoff
gets
goal
a
in
couple
6
goals
years.
too. So yeah, so I mean, it's like the story of the playoffs. The game winners are scored by guys that we have no idea, except for the Connor McDavid one. But yeah, Kerry, what did you think about this game and that Colorado's moving on to this to the final now?
Oh, it was pretty wild. I mean, going in, if somebody would have said they're going to need JT Compher and Darren Helm to do this for them, he would have been like, well, I guess there's going to be another game in Denver. But, and there is, I guess it's just going to be not against the Blues. The problem is they did so well against that top line tonight. And Husso was like really, really good.
Yeah.
And then it was just kind of a fling it on net and, pray there because time's running out. And it's just one of those seeing eye goals that just got through. I mean, it was a great shot. I mean, bouncing off the boards back to him, but just completely unexpected hero, I guess, if you want to call it that for, I mean, I think everybody with that line out there had this earmarked for, but this is going to overtime.
Yeah.
But, I mean, just a great shot. I mean, that's a huge play when you look at the guys that were on the ice for them. Not a lot of household names, I guess, but that's just sort of been the story for them. As this series has kind of progressed, you've gotten big goals from guys like Arturi Lehkonen. Compher was huge; those are his first 2 goals of the playoffs.
Yeah,
and just still having that confidence and still flinging it on net, even though those guys hadn't really done that much, just says quite a bit about sort of the depth of this team. And I just don't know if Husso was tired, but he was awesome in this game. He was the Blues MVP, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I look at Darren Helm. He's like channeling his playoff self from like 2010, 2011, because he was scoring, like he had 7, 8, 10 goals in that 4 playoff runs for the Red Wings. So it's not like he's a stranger to scoring in the playoffs, but he hasn't done it in a long time. Like you said,
it's been a while. So, yes.
So I mean, of course, it's him that scores the winner. Great play by Eric Johnson on bringing it out of his own zone and bringing it in there too. So a lot of things, but I mean, he was just throwing it on net. It's not like he was trying to score. But yeah, great shot. And you never know. You throw it on goal, you never know what'll happen. So, and with 5 seconds to go, basically was the game. Well, it was like overtime at that point. So sure. It's been a crazy playoffs this year. I mean, we've had a few of these late second goals, like Ross Colton in the Lightning series scored one with like 3 seconds left to win a game. So it's like all these late goals, you can't stop playing until the final horn. So
I mean, it was kind of it's also like not just Darren Helm and JT Compher. I mean, Justin Falk scored too. He hadn't.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not a guy that is like climbing up the all-time scoring charts or anything. So it was the teams getting the stuff from the guys they needed. Because even when we did the series preview, some of the names that were mentioned were Jordan Kyrou, JT Compher, Lehkonen, guys like that. Hey, if these guys can come through, Robert Thomas, the last couple of games, finally, he was great, I thought, in this game. And it's just those guys finally showed up. And then another big thing that we talked about was the power play for both teams. Yeah. And if you look at this, the Blues go 0 for 2. The Avalanche get the equalizer from Compher. Yeah, there was 1 second left in the power play. Still a power play goal on what's got to be the most infuriating penalty for coaches is, I mean, that was just a delay of game for flicking the puck over the board. So it's just tough that was the one that tied it up because, I mean, I just thought that the Blues were withstanding everything Colorado was throwing at them until that sort of was like a little crack in the armor right there. And that was just a tough one.
Yeah. And like Husso was probably, well, he was the best I've seen him in this playoffs so far. And of course he puts together a great game and they don't win. So it's like,
right. And yeah. And then Colorado, conversely, Darcy Kemper's only got to face 20 shots, and not the best game for him. Best save of the night was Josh Manson blocking that shot when Kemper had sort of slid out of his crease. That looked like a surefire wide open goal, and Manson, blocks the shot. So
yeah,
St. Louis is going to look back at this and feel like, gosh, we were so close. They were so close to getting these guys. And then who knows if it goes to game 7, especially since they'd already won twice in Colorado. Yeah. So it's just, there's just a couple of plays, the puck barely going over the glass, Manson making that save, and then Helm just by inches getting that one in. It's just, that's how close it's been. And the difference is, for Colorado, the last 3 years, it's been that close, but they've been on the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if now they just drop the reins. Hey, the curse is over. Let's run and see what happens. But either way, I think there's going to be a ton of goals scored in that next series.
Well, let's talk about that next series now. But we'll do a full preview of it coming up, but what do you think the Avalanche's chances against the Edmonton Oilers are? It's going to be the marquee matchup, Nathan MacKinnon versus Connor McDavid. Granted, MacKinnon wasn't as noticeable in this game. They did a really good job against that top line you mentioned off the top. Thing is, the Oilers don't have a shutdown center like Ryan O'Reilly. They don't. They don't have a guy they're going to send their match up against. They're probably going to match power on power, I would assume. What do you think that matchup will be like in this next one?
I know that the 3 regular season games between these teams were all electrifying. 2 of them went to overtime. Colorado won 1 in overtime, won 1 in a shootout. Then they lost the last one 6-3. And I think that one was here in Denver. So and another interesting side note, and we've talked about this before, is say what you want about Mike Smith. He hasn't lost in regulation to the Avalanche since 2008. That's like November 29th, I think, of 2008 was the last time he lost in regulation to them. So, yeah, the rosters have changed and everything, but he just still keeps doing it. He did it twice this year where, he lost to 1 in a shootout, and that game was really good. And then, he loses in overtime, where Colorado 3-on-3 in overtime in the regular season. They're really, really hard to stop when you're sitting there with, usually it's Gabriel Landeskog, Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar are your 3 out there, and they're faster than pretty much anybody else in the league, just about. So that's a different animal, even if one of these games goes to overtime because it's 5-on-5. So there's all these interesting little side notes like that with Mike Smith and how close that series was during the regular season. It's just going to be, it should be very interesting. I do think you might have another 9-6 game like they had in the game 1 against the Flames. I don't know if it'll be game 1, but Evander Kane's caused Colorado trouble. They've got plenty of guys that, have had some success against this Colorado team, but it'll be interesting to see, hey, now they can't say we're stuck in the second round anymore is what's coming out of the Avalanche locker room, I'm sure. So for them it'll be interesting to see how they respond to this. They're clearly a talented team, but you're down to the last 4 teams now, after that other series in the East gets resolved, of course, but you're down to the last 2 in the West. This is what they've been talking about for 2 years, the last 3 years. And I just think that series it's got to go probably 6 or 7 games unless some team figures out something, but they haven't been able to the last couple of years because those games between, the last, not counting like the 8 teams per division year of COVID, but the last the matchups that these teams have had the last few years have all been really good. So I don't expect anything different in this series.
Yeah, we're gonna see another great matchup. I know that the Calgary Edmonton series was really good. This one's going to be really good. I mean, you basically have two of the fastest players in the NHL going against each other, arguably. I don't know if there's anyone faster in the NHL right now. And how both those guys play is just ridiculous. So it's going to be fun, you know. And the thing is both teams have pretty good depth. Again, the Avalanche can, you know, throw out Cale Makar. Edmonton doesn't really have a defenseman like that. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that matches up as well. And then you got the coaching side too. You got the more experienced coach against the rookie coach, although Calgary had that too, and they weren't able to. So, you know, we'll see if Connor McDavid can keep his, and Draisaitl for that matter, can keep their point streaks and ridiculous amount of points going.
Well, and I mean, even guys like Zach Hyman has been incredible. He was in that last series. The defensemen for Edmonton have gotten involved more. We know that all the way through the playoffs, the defensemen for Colorado have been ridiculously involved. Usually there's been a couple of games where they outshot, the forwards as far as getting that stuff on target. And a lot of it starts back there when you have a guy like Makar, but seeing Evan Bouchard, Darnell Nurse finally scored, and at long last, he's been sort of snake bit, but, just all around both of these teams, it feels like they got three lines. Both of them have three lines that are regularly scoring. They've got defensemen that are, contributing too. The difference is it just sort of felt like, for Mike Smith, he had his moments, but Darcy Kemper's just had his moments too. I mean, he's just kind of been getting by. He's gotten through these last few games. It's just, he hasn't really faced that many shots. So it'll be interesting to see if it's one of those games where one team has 54 shots and the other one has 47, or if it's going to be more like this game where one team's got 40, the other team's got 20. Because I think if either one of these teams, Edmonton or Colorado, is only getting off 20 shots in a game, that team's probably losing. So
that's right. But before we close out here, I want to ask you how, they were mentioning during the broadcast about Sam Girard, and Colorado seems to have missed him a bit. Do you think that's going to come into play a lot in this next series, not having Girard there, because he does a lot for this team and he's not going to be back. We know that. It's going to be a long recovery time for him. What do you think that will affect the next series? I mean, just briefly, because we will have a preview on it, of course. But
I mean, I just think that Bowen Byram has really stepped up in the absence of Sam Girard, but Girard is such a he's such a great skater that he can, sort of weave that stuff out of trouble in the back end when it might be, a 2-on-1 or he gets caught, on these odd man rushes and stuff. He can calm that stuff down. He's been really good at that sort of thing. Byram's still figuring that out. His offensive game has been great, but it's just hard when you lose that sort of, calm, collected, he's not going to get rattled, or he's, with this unfazed defenseman back there when going up against a team that's as offensively electrifying as Edmonton is. It'll be interesting I mean, you don't want to say it's a baptism of fire because Byram's been playing for a while, and they still have guys like Jack and Eric Johnson that have been around for a million years. But it will be interesting to see. Somebody's got to fill those defensive minutes, and against this team more than anybody. And that will just seeing how they respond to that will be really interesting, just because they're going to miss that guy in a series like this for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, kudos to Josh Manson. He was he played a heck of a game, and making a save on Kemper's like way out of the.
Kemper just sort of like slid like a mile, and then that was the play of the game. I mean, before that, Husso had made a couple of crazy saves. He made one save on McKinnon that was lights out. And it was just like, okay, this guy's dialed in. And then Kemper just kind of got bailed out a couple of times. And it was like, or that game could have been could have been having a completely different conversation, not talking about Edmonton at all, and instead talking about, geez, what do these guys got to do to get out of the second round? But they just got enough plays from enough of the like kind of role player guys, like stay in your lane guys. And I mean, Manson's a guy that was brought in at the trade deadline. Helm was brought in earlier, or brought in this season just because of he's got that experience. He's been around forever. It's weird seeing him in a jersey that isn't a Red Wings jersey, but Lehkonen was another guy that was good in this series that they brought in on the trade deadline. Andrew Cogliano had a shorthanded goal in the first series. So it seems like every chess move that Joe Sakic made, whether at the beginning of the year or during the season on the trade deadline, they've all really panned out with big plays for him somewhere down the line. So
that's right. Manson had that OT winner too. So so he's stepped up, and I think he's going to have to do more of that because, like you said, someone's going to have to fill those defensive minutes. He's probably be one of the guys that will have to do it. So we'll see what happens. That's going to be a fun series. So we'll see. Well, we're going to see more of each other on post-game shows. And Jim Parsons will be the other guy on our panel as we go through the Edmonton, Colorado series coming up. So stick with us. We'll have a post-game shows after every game there. We'll see how long that goes. Thanks for joining us, as always, on these post-game shows on the YouTube channel. For Matthew Zator and Kerry Collins, we will see you next time on YouTube here.